Good evening and welcome to African Voices platform. My name is Tchiyiwe Chihana. Now, on August the 12th, Zambia will be holding its general elections and subsequently usher in its next president and vice president. The Patriotic Front is the current party in government, and the incumbent, President Lungu, is contesting for the presidency. He recently announced his running mate for the office of vice president, Professor Nkandu Luo, whom I'm honored to be hosting tonight. Good evening, Professor Nkandu Luo, and thank you so much for coming to African Voices platform.
Good evening, and indeed I feel very honored and privileged to be on your program.
It's equally an honor. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm just going to go straight into it. When President Lungu announced you as his running mate, he said there was no shred of doubt within him that Professor Nkandu Luo was the right choice. And he also went on to mention several accolades. So I want to get behind those headlines that we know of, and I want to get behind anything else that I've heard. I would want to hear from you. Who is Professor Nkandu Luo? And what's your story? You're the Patriotic Front's candidate for vice president. Who are you?
Well, I am a professor of microbiology and immunology and worked for so many years at the University Teaching Hospital here in Lusaka. I'm a daughter to the late Bason Elijah Luo and Alice Chibulungo Nachive Sakunda, who were both teachers. And I was born at Lubwa Mission Hospital. And many people may wonder, what is this Lubwa Mission Hospital? This was part of the mission that the father to Dr. David Kenneth Kaunda, may he so rest in peace, set up. And that's where the life of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda started. And one interesting thing is that when I was born and baptized, the mother to the late Dr. Kenneth Kaunda was my godmother. And I grew up both in the village in Chinsali and Chivesakunda village, now Shuangandu. And when my parents moved to Lusaka, I went through several schools here in Lusaka, but I ended up having gone to 2 secondary schools, Roma Girls Secondary School and the Dominican Convent, both here in Lusaka. Then I went to do my university training in many, many universities around the world, where I got various qualifications. I started with the Moscow State University and even specialized as a microbiologist. Then I went to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where I also got my PhD. At the same time, did a part-time master's at Brunel University in the Middlesex, where I got another master's degree, but this time in immunology. So my PhD and master's degree, second master's, is in immunology. I ventured immediately into working in the area of HIV/AIDS and set up a lot of programs in Zambia around HIV. Some that come to mind is the blood transfusion services, the testing capacity for HIV in the country across Zambia, and the prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV, developing laboratory policies and training programs across Zambia, and many other that can take me a whole day to explain. And so that was my professional life, and it has continued up to now. But I also ventured into politics in 1996 when I stood for parliament in Mandev constituency. And after winning that parliamentary seat, I was appointed as Deputy Minister of Health. And a year later, I was moved to full cabinet in Ministry of Health. Then 3 years later, I was transferred to the Ministry of Communications and Transport. Then I took a break for about 10 years. Then I was recalled by President Sata to run now for parliament in Munali constituency, where I've been member for 2 terms. And from that time, I was appointed as Minister of Local Government, Housing and Environmental Protection. Then I was moved to set up a new ministry that has just been set up of Chiefs and Traditional Affairs. Later on, President Lungu, when he was elected, he sent me to go and set up
I appear to have lost you there. Can you hear me? Professor Luo?
And livestock. So if you like, I've actually been minister in about 7 ministries of the Zambian government. So that's my professional career.
That's really amazing. I wanted to back up
the other
just a
side
little
of
bit.
life that people don't know much about me is that I have been running charities, supporting children across Zambia. My current head count is that we have actually supported children in education, some up to college and university level, where we have been supporting about 355,000 children across Zambia. And I also have another charity called the didnt program that transforms sex workers from sex work to better life.
Professor, can I just take you back just a little bit, because I really want to get back into the person as well, because you've got so much there. I want to go back to 1996, that transition. What was it that prompted you to get into politics? Why the shift?
Well, I was invited by President Chiluba then. In fact, earlier than 1996, somewhere around 1992, President Chiluba asked me to be appointed as minister in his government. I took one good look at him and I said, Your Excellency, he used to be preferred to be called Mr. President. I said, you know, I just love my professional career and my goal has been to become a professor. So at this point, I'm just about getting there. I wouldn't venture into politics. So he looked at me and says, do you know when I offer jobs to your friends, everybody jumps? I said, well, I'm different. At this point, I would like to really pursue my professional career. So in 1993, when I was awarded professorship, he then called me to his office and says, now you're a professor. Can I appoint you? And I say, Your Excellency, I'm just starting to enjoy my title. So when 1996 elections came, he then called me and says, I think you have now enjoyed your title. Why don't you run for parliament? In fact, preferably I wanted to run in Lusaka Central, but due to circumstances, I was moved to Mandevu constituency.
So you say you would have liked to run for Lusaka Central constituency. What was the impetus? Why would you have wanted to do that?
Well, you know, Lusaka Central constituency was a constituency where I actually lived. And therefore, it was much more easier for me to maneuver as a member of parliament there. But again, President Chiluba called me to his office and says, look, you've been working with the grassroots. And Mandevu is where you find all the people that need support, you know, like, you know, the kind of charities I was running. So he thought that was a better constituency, especially that it was not a necessity for members of parliament to run exactly where they live. And I understood that because one of my charities that I talked about, the SWAS, we already had a lot of centers that we had set up with the Irish support. We bought houses and set up what we called family support home, where the children we were supporting for education, in our research, we realized that they were not performing well in school because of going to school hungry. So we then were able to cook soya porridge every morning. So before they go to school, they would go and eat, and even their performance improved. So we had these already working. So as member of parliament, when I won elections, I just enhanced these programs where we had schools lacking. We put up community schools so that all the children could access education. So in fact, I was very pleased with the thought process of His Excellency, Dr. Chiluba, to move me to where I would be more useful and probably make more impact for the people that I was serving.
Right, yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to get back into your legacy around HIV/AIDS, because I think that's a very important period. We lost a lot of the productive generation actually during that time, and you seem to have done quite a lot of work around that. So could you tell me what the biggest initiative perhaps that we may not know of that you led on?
Yeah, well, you know, when I just came back from training, Professor Chintu, may he so rest in peace, and Professor Anne Bailey, who is a deacon now in the UK, and a Professor Hira, who is back in India now, presented a patient to me and says, you know, they've been grappling with this patient for a very long time. And this patient doesn't live in a crowded place. And yet they come in, present the tuberculosis. Next minute, they have some skin problems. And at that point, they had the diagnosis, because Professor Hira was a skin specialist, and Professor Anne Bailey was a surgeon, but also an oncologist. And this patient was presenting with Kaposi sarcoma. And they said, look, as a young immunologist, tell us what is going on with this patient. And when I was in England, I used to read a lot. And also because I was doing my work in sickle cell anemia, we used to see a lot of patients presenting with AIDS. So I said, look, I've done everything. The only thing that we need to really focus on is whether this patient has got this new disease called AIDS. So that's when we then took some bloods, and I contacted a colleague of mine I worked with at the Middlesex Hospital, and we worked on the samples. And alas, we found that this person had HIV. So if you like, I was amongst the first 4 doctors at the University Teaching Hospital that actually discovered the first case of HIV. And then we reported to the Ministry of Health, and then they reported to the country that in fact Zambia had cases of HIV/AIDS. And at that point, I just gotten a scholarship to go to study in Switzerland in immunology and immunopathology of infectious diseases. So I then said I'll take advantage of my being in Geneva to actually even try and mobilize resources, because at that point I was convinced that a lot of people in Zambia would not get HIV only through sexual transmission, but through blood transfusion, because we're not testing for anything. We just collect blood, transfuse. So if it's infected, then it meant other people were getting HIV because of that. And I saw that in the clinic where I used to work with Professor Chintu, where he was seeing sickle cell anemia patients. So when I was in Geneva, and I went to then they had set up the global program on AIDS under the leadership of Dr. Jonathan Mann. I went to talk to him. I said, you know, the best way for us to set up the AIDS program in Zambia is for us to start with testing. And so he said, can you put the concept to paper? Which I did with Professor Richard Taylor. And we were funded to the tune of $700,000, which I came back with to Zambia. And that's how we now started running with the HIV/AIDS programs. If you read the whole HIV program in Zambia, it starts with talking about the short-term plan. That is the plan that I set up with the $700,000. Meaning we set up the 3 screening centers across Zambia and ensured that all the blood that was tested, that was transfused, was tested for HIV. And that we were also able to collect statistics of what the seroprevalence rates were in Zambia. And at that time, our rates had risen to something like 25% in the population, because we had done a Mount Center study between Mama Yemo Hospital in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia, and also Makerere University in Uganda. And our figures were really frightening. So that now forced us as a team to set up what is called the medium-term plan and all the other programs that followed. But as usual, people were not.
It's quite a big legacy, obviously, with how HIV/AIDS itself has changed the landscape of our country. So yeah, it's good to refer back. So maybe I'll get back a little bit into where you are today, having done all that work and how you got into politics. So now you're vying for the presidency. I mean, the vice presidency. Yeah. Should the election go the way of your political party, what are your priorities going to be as leader of government business in the House?
Well, I think it goes without saying that the Patriotic Front is looking forward to winning these elections. First and foremost, we want to build on the work that we have done in the last 10 years. Remember, at the time we won elections in 2011, there were all these challenges of the infrastructure, the economy, and so on. And on the advice of economists, it is not possible for any country, regardless of what you do, any economic maneuvers, your economy can never improve if you don't have infrastructure. And all the countries that are developed today, they had to invest in infrastructure development. So this is what we have been doing in the last 10 years. So we have invested in infrastructure in terms of transport infrastructure, health infrastructure, education infrastructure, from primary to universities. We have invested in livestock and farming infrastructure. And so time now has come for us to start now building on this so that we now start implementing programs that are going now to ride on this work that we've done in the last 10 years. So our theme for elections now is making every Zambian count, because every Zambian must be a key player in Zambia, one way or another. So what am I saying? This is one time that we are going to really focus on the wealth that this country has. We have everything that you can think of riding over on our infrastructure development that can bring money into the Zambian economy. Okay. And I can elaborate on that.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you a chance to elaborate on it, but I just want to bring in something that, so with focusing on infrastructure, it means that some things have actually suffered according to the African Development Bank. And in recent reports, they've talked about the Zambia experiencing serious macroeconomic challenges, the cost of living for families being really high. I'm wondering what your response is to that, because obviously you're telling me you've been working on infrastructure, but this is what has happened to the people. What's your response to that, and what does recovery look like under your government?
I think, when you're looking at the economy, if you focus on one thing, then you get the answer that you want to get. But I don't know which country today can say their economy is doing well, because we have one of the epidemics, to me, which is even worse than the HIV/AIDS epidemic, known as the coronavirus. The coronavirus has impacted negatively on every country's economy, not only Zambia. Especially when you have a country like Zambia, which is bordered by technically 8 countries, but in essence by 10. And when, for example, South Africa locks down, it will affect what's going on in Zimbabwe. It will affect what's going on in Zambia, because of our trade and commerce. So if you just look at infrastructure, because we've invested money in infrastructure, then the economy of Zambia is not doing well. Probably that's not the best. We should look at the climate change, the impact that climate change has had on Zambia. If you recall, we had serious droughts, and that drought affected our water situation and most of our infrastructure. If we didn't actually plan for the infrastructure we've done in 10 years, would even have suffered more, because before that, all the infrastructure was based on hydro. Right. But fortunately, as we looked at infrastructure development, we also started investing in other sources of energy, such as the solar energy. So all that affected our economic activities. Okay. And many other countries can tell you that.
No, I
appreciate. Then came the COVID. So these are factors that you cannot control as a people. Having said that, a country cannot continue crying. As a country now, you should look at what are the opportunities that you have that can actually make you regain. And that's why we started investing in damming, so that we start preserving water to be able to even again respond to the drought so that our hydropower continues. Right. When our water went down, we obviously had to start buying power at very high cost from South Africa and Mozambique. So now we are looking at other things that we can do to recover our economy. And I will expand on that when time comes.
When time comes, okay. So maybe is it a good opportunity now for you to expand on this? Because I think the comeback to that, if somebody was listening, I mean, to our viewers right now, would be actually pre-COVID, the cost of living for families had already started to rise. So maybe you could speak to that from that context, if you will.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that pre-COVID, we also had the drought, which made us buy power at very high prices. So this has been just a build-up. So if you look back a few years ago, you read about the impact that the climate change had on Zambia. And that's when the pricing started rising. However, having said that, I'm sure you have seen the analysis of the cost. In fact, for some of the things, Zambia is the cheapest. But because the prices for Zambia have been going down, and people are not able to compare with other countries, they obviously feel that the price is going up. Now, we cannot continue crying over spilled milk because these things have happened. We now have to give hope to the people of Zambia. Now, how do we give hope to the people of Zambia? We then look at the resources that we have internally and say, how can we translate these resources? We also look at some of the activities that we have done, such as the educational sector. How can we use the human capital that we have with education to actually enhance the development of the country? Then we look at the youth population who have a lot of energy. What is it that we can do to the youth population to be part of these key players, and so on and so on? Okay, so if you listen to our economic recovery program and our manifesto, it actually expounds on that. And some of these we have already started implementing. One, we using the farming as one of our diversification program because of the natural resources that we have around farming, such as water. Zambia has abundant water. Zambia has Arab land. We have now started very, very aggressive programs in agriculture, where we are supporting farmers, both in terms of infrastructure development, seed packs, and we also put up some dams across the country so that the water resource, where it isn't available, is available, so that the farming can continue. And we are not only dependent on red-fed agriculture. In terms of the infrastructure that we have put it under livestock, we have also been aggressively supporting women's groups. And we are using a cooperative concept because of the value that you get out of a cooperative. If you bring 10, 20 people together with different skills, both in terms of management, leadership, the actual skill in livestock or farming, then these people will do better than if you started empowering individuals. So we have been
these cooperatives, Professor, the cooperatives you just talked about that are empowering women. Are they visible? Because it's the first I've heard of them. How do people actually access that information? Are they government-led programs?
They are government-led programs. If you want, I can even give you an example, having been an immediate minister of fisheries and livestock, personally with my team, we're going constituency by constituency, district by district, province by province,
Right.
And mobilizing all cooperatives, training them on the various skills that are required in a cooperative to do. We distributed animals from the smallest, a quail, chickens, goats, pigs, to cows. And if you walk around Zambia, they are all there visible. In fact, I can even send you some of the captions of even people talking how better off they've become ever since this program started. For 1.5 years, we're doing that.
And it's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing. It's still ongoing.
No, I genuinely have not heard about that, but that's
oh my God, it's one of the programs of the moment. Everybody is into this livestock farming now. In fact, I can tell you that we got overwhelmed because everybody, and in fact, there was a time maybe, because normally the reporting is usually not on positive energy, but usually on negative energy here in this country. There was a time they reported that, oh, there is a shortage of day-old chicks on the market. So the president called me and said, Professor, what is all this? We did an investigation. What we found is that the people that produce the day-old chicks, their market, their production has remained constant, but the demand has gone about 5 times fold. So I had to call all the people that are engaged in this, the hybrids, the rose farms, to say, look, can you expand? And they had to say, unless government assures us that, you know, we will have a market. I said, but the market is already earning. So they then had to promise me that they will start their investment by September, the production will increase. So it's one of the programs. If you talk to any Zambian, even on the street, they'll talk to you about it.
Okay, that's good to
I
hear.
think what we are not good at as a team is to sing and blow our trumpet. So the negative energies, especially on social media, tend to overwhelm the public. The positive energies where you are talking about the good things you are doing, you know, remain quiet. But you can talk to any Zambian here. In fact, one of the things a lot of people talk about me is not even anything else but my stay in fisheries and livestock. Because apart from that, we have given out a lot of money across the country, especially to young people, to start fish farming. So if they haven't been to school,
Professor, maybe there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the government side in making these things visible. I mean, if they are happening, and also the impact, the people who are being impacted and actually experiencing these things positively, we don't see them. So maybe that's why the stories that we hear about are those that where people are not actually benefiting from this. Or
no, I can't agree with you more. I can't agree with you more. And especially that the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock has its own media unit. But I think you will see an improvement, because that's one thing I worked on and had to build and make sure they are not producing things for news, but they start doing a lot of feature articles, a lot of, what is the word in journalism, where you do, you go to a community and the people show you what they are doing, then you show it on TV. So I think it has started, and I can send you some of the things that I've started doing. And I can't agree with you more. We really need to hype up our media so that the whole world knows what we are doing.
Yeah, and I think more on objective reporting, the facts on the ground is quite important. Now, let's talk about controversies, because you talked a bit about one of the you mentioned that there's a lot of propaganda per se. I want to hear from you. So you made a controversial decision at the time when you served as Minister of Higher Education, where you stopped the dispersing of meal allowances for students. So firstly, why did you come to this decision? How did you arrive at it? And secondly, is that a decision you would revisit once in office, if elected?
So I'll answer it like this, that from independence of Zambia, in the UNIP government built 2 universities, the University of Zambia and the Copperbelt University.
Yeah.
And for many years, these universities, the two, remained the only universities in Zambia. When the MMD government came into power, they built an additional university called Mulungushi University. And if you add 27 years plus 20, that is 47 years. Zambia ended up with only 3 universities. PF has been in government for 10 years. And what the decision of the PF government, as we were looking at infrastructure, I told you earlier that we had to put in infrastructure from primary to university level. In the 10 years we've been in government, we built Kapasamakasa University, Mukuba University, Nkuruma University, Palavana University, and which other one? The others are still in progress being built. So we ended up with a total of 7 universities. So we looked around that how are we going to ensure that these students are supported? And I must remind you that when Mulungushi University was established, the students were not getting any scholarships. The scholarships remained a preserve of University of Zambia and Copperbelt University. So I had to make 2 very important decisions to ensure that all the universities, regardless, should access support. And the most important support any student can want is to make sure their fees are paid, their book allowances are paid, their projects allowances are paid, because those are the ones that are critical for education. So the story of the meal allowance is one of the examples of negative energies, where people do not look at the bigger picture because they want to politicize an issue. So this is why this has been picked. But the whole essence of this decision was to ensure that all the students get financial support. Remember, our theme is making every Zambian count.
Okay.
So if you are going to leave, you are going to leave some students unsupported, then that theme will not hold water. Then secondly,
how was that communicated? How effective was the communication on that? Because you talked about how much earlier in your career you made it possible for children to be fed at school so they could thrive. And I suppose a similar principle would apply for university students. So this was being pulled from underneath them quite suddenly, and that would have changed quite a lot of lives, I suppose. So it mattered to them, I suppose.
I think that, the way life is, communication was done. There was a lot of discussion. And normally when you do a policy document here in Zambia, it's not done in an office. There's even what is called consultations across the country. But when people are bent on something, they can actually keep a deaf ear to that. And let me tell you the principles of our thoughts. And I want to give you an example of my own home. I have 2 sons. And if, for example, one said, Professor, today my children get up and say, there's only 1 slice of bread. And as a mother, then I look at my 2 sons, I take this slice and give it to the older one. Then what will happen to the younger one? He will obviously say, Mom doesn't love me. So the right thing to do, if you have only 1 slice of bread, is to split it. So as Minister of Higher Education, I was mother to 7 universities, and I was mother to 29 colleges. because the colleges were not getting any support, the college students. So I had to take that money and see what was the best to ensure that the college students also got support. The university students, all of them got support. And I think the best way to judge this particular decision is to listen to the students themselves. Because even at that time, I had students, even those from private universities, came to say, Mom, how about extending this to even private universities? And the good news is that alongside that decision, I also made a decision for us to be able to be getting those that have gone through the university to start paying back for the, so we introduced what is called the Scholarships and Loans Board. So right now we have adequate money through this, and people have been very willing to support this education fund, which now students, we have increased in numbers who we can support. And now we are looking at how we can support those in private universities. Now, if you know me, for me, what I think is that let those who want to just cause trouble, cause the trouble, but posterity will judge me. And if you talk to students now, today, you will hear the accolades. Even when I moved to fisheries and livestock, all of them were, Mommy, you can't leave us in education and so on. And I think that's the best way in leadership to proceed.
Okay, thank you for addressing that.
Do that which is right, which will benefit the majority.
Thanks so much for addressing that. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will be wanting to hear your response with clarity. I also wanted to talk to you about the diaspora community, Professor. If relationships between the diaspora community and the Zambian government, what would you do to foster those and what could you do better? We have seen that in the last year, for example, here in the UK, there's been a lot of some kind of collaboration, especially with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the High Commission here in the UK and the diaspora community. But what could foster better relations, and what do you see the diaspora's engagement being?
You know, one of the things I really want to say, and I'm glad you have asked me that question, is to say to the people out there in diaspora, is that they will use my office to better engage with the Zambian government. And I want to take this opportunity to invite them that soon after elections, I would like either through their representatives or their leaders to really engage my office and see some great things that we can put together. What am I talking about? You know, I as Minister of Higher Education, I was privileged to be attending activities and forums that organized by the World Bank. And one of them was called PASET. And every time people came to address us on things that we could do to transform the educational sector, there were people from Ghana, people from Ethiopia, people from Nigeria, and telling us all the great things they are doing in their countries, top scientists of the world. But what was sad is that I couldn't see any Zambians. And then as I engaged my colleagues a lot, both in the different governments, I came across, in fact, by accident, I happened to be on a plane, which was full of Black Americans and Ghanaians. And they were saying, oh, we are going home. We are going home. So the Ghanaians in the diaspora had been mobilizing and gotten all these people to come and do investments back in Ghana. When you are talking about economic recovery, that is one of the tools for economic recovery. Getting our people out there in diaspora, engaging big business people with all the wealth that Zambia has, talking about the mining sector, talking about the wood, the different woods that we have in this country, the water, what you can do with water, the beaches. Our colleagues in the diaspora are an important tool. So instead of us, staying apart, there's every merit in the diaspora people, especially those with excellent skills, to come back. The other day, I was reading about a Zambian who is part of the development of the AstraZeneca in Oxford. And yet we are struggling here to even buy vaccines to vaccinate our people. Then as I was talking, someone said, even on the team that is developing Pfizer, there is a Zambian. You understand?
Yeah.
So this, to me, is extremely important. And being a scientist myself and a health professional myself, I would really, really love to engage our colleagues in the diaspora and even set up a desk that actually deals and filters this kind of activities. So I'm glad you asked me this question, and let me take this opportunity to invite those in the diaspora that are listening to me, that here is an opportunity presenting itself where we can better engage and do great things. Divided you fall, united you stand.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure that's a very welcome invitation that most of us are going to be grabbing. And what about the UK itself? So the UK has been an important bilateral partner in many sectors, including the promotion of democratic policies and processes. What areas of cooperation would you like to see strengthened with the United Kingdom's government, should you be elected Vice President?
The UK will remain a very important partner in our engagement as a country. And there is so much space for us to collaborate. First of all, the UK understands Zambia very well because it colonized Zambia many, many years ago. And therefore, they know exactly the landscape, the challenges, the issues. So it's very, very easy to engage because we can remind each other on the different things that we can do together. I think one of the things that I can say, having worked in some of the ministries, we had very, very good engagement with the British High Commission here in Zambia and the DFID on issues of democracy, on issues of gender, and issues of, child marriage issues and so on. And I remember being invited by the Prime Minister there to come and speak at a forum there in the UK. So really, there's so much we can do together from the social aspects, but also from the trade and commerce aspect. There's so much we can do together. First of all, we can learn from each other. Secondly, we can put a lot of programs together. And for example, just recently, when I was Minister of Fisheries and Livestock, we had already started engaging. It's just the coronavirus that came and disrupted what we're doing. We're engaging with the UK and also the small island called Jersey in the English Channel, so that we could get together to do some work in livestock. So there's a lot we can do together. And again, these are some of the engagements that I will obviously be doing with the various governments, and some of which we have already started. And we also have started some engagement with the American team on setting up centers of excellence around the country in farming and livestock. So this is work in progress.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I also want to, I would like to get a reflection from you. Amnesty International released a report very recently on Zambia, and it was titled Ruling by Fear and Repression. So this report detailed how rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly have come under increasing attack. It also highlighted how opposition leaders, activists are jailed, and independent media outlets are being shut down. I wondered if you could reflect on that report. What's your response as a party, or as you as Professor Nkandu Luo, who is looking to become Vice President of Zambia?
Yeah, well, I think that even all these reports that get released, again, it's a matter of engaging each other long before even that report comes out, because it depends where you're getting your information. And depending, and talking as a researcher myself, sometimes you need to get balanced inputs into whatever report you are doing. Because if there is a country where there is freedom of expression, it's Zambia. So sometimes when I read some of these reports, I just say, do I live in a different Zambia? Or am I living in the same Zambia that I live in? Because really, some of these reports do not reflect the reality of what's happening in Zambia. But all I can say is that as a government, we'll continue improving on our engagement with our colleagues. Now, for me, one thing I don't want to talk about really is to talk about another person or another party, because then it brings you to a different level. All I can say is that we will continue as a government, especially through my office, to engage better, to put up research teams. And one of the things that we introduced my office is a research team that gives us balanced reports, so that as those other reports come out, we also are able to engage international reputable institutions to also be able to provide a much more balanced report, which then people are able to engage and able to gauge. But also, I think one of the things we need to do as a country is actively continue inviting people to Zambia, because that brings a different dimension to the way people perceive the country. And I'm just looking forward to coronavirus giving us a bit of space so that more people can come to Zambia and see what a friendly country is here, where everybody is surviving on equal footing. So that's all I can say. Okay, life is about better communication.
Thank you very much for that reflection. Now, so we've got, I think we've just got barely a month before you actually have the elections in Zambia. You are actively going to start campaigning now. So there's another girl you're going to meet maybe in Lundazi, where I come from, who is Nkandu Luo. What do you say to a little girl that you're meeting in those rural communities, for example, now?
The good news is that a lot of people know me. And because they have either seen me by supporting their children in education, or they have seen me through my HIV/AIDS activities, or they've seen me delivering chickens and goats and things to them. But for those who don't know me, I will make sure that they appreciate the fact that Professor Nkandu Luo can be a professor when she's in those circles. But when I'm at community level, I'm a community worker. And I'm one person who can sit with people on the ground, on the floor. And even as I was being nominated by President Lungu, when people asked me, I just said I received that nomination with a lot of humility. In fact, I'll tell you a story that one time I was in Mununga, where we are doing some research. Then we went to a village head woman to give us permission to do research. So you know how our people in the villages, they receive visitors. So she cooked some shima for us. So when we came back to say bye-bye to her, she says, oh no, you can't leave home. I've prepared some food, but I don't have much. All I have is katapa. These are leaves of cassava. Yeah. So we said, oh, thank you very much. So she was watching me eating with everybody else. Then when we finished, we said, oh, thank you very much for the lunch. She says, you've really shocked me. I was shivering what I would do with this professor, but I looked around, I didn't even have a chicken. So, you know, all I had was katapanchi. Watching you eat, I was so surprised. Then I said to her, I said, you can only give us what you have. If we wanted to eat a chicken, we would have brought you the chicken. But you also surprised us for giving us lunch. So, life is about humility and knowing the levels at which you are mixing. You can't go to somebody's house and start demanding for a chair, which you have not provided them. If they don't have, you sit with them on the reed mat that they have. So that is the Nkandu Luo they will meet in the field.
Okay, talking about provision then, what is the Nkandu Luo they will meet going to provide for them should she be elected as vice president? What should they hope for, especially in rural communities actually, that you seem to really engage with?
I think that what they should hope for with the new office is that I'll work very closely, because the president already set up a ministry called the Ministry of Chiefs and Traditional Affairs. Mm-hmm. And probably people don't understand this ministry, and I happen to have worked in that ministry. It's actually the ministry that is going to run the rural development agenda. And when I was minister there, I started a program called One Chiefdom, Three Industries. And that's something that will in fact be my main theme as vice president, to see that the people in the chiefdoms start looking at the resources that they have and translate them in money. When they see the leaves, what can they do with the leaves? When they see the trees, what they can do with the trees, not only cutting them down for wood, but preserving them so that they start producing massive amounts of honey, start putting up production units in honey. When they see water, what can they do with water? They can use water to start now propagating fish, so that the issue of malnutrition comes to an end, because they're able to have fish right next to them and they can eat. And the examples that I can give you are many. So one of my major activities at the rural level is actually getting the chiefdoms to participate in industrialization, which is one of our main objectives as a government, that in the next 5 years, we want to industrialize. So the rural areas would be not left behind from industrialization.
That's brilliant, thank you. And before I let you go, any words to woman Inongewina? I mean, she's a woman like you, and she's been holding this portfolio, and she's leaving.
Let me tell you something. You know, my appointment, I owe it to Mama Inongewina. Mama Inongewina ran that office with integrity, with humility, and hard work. It's this recognition that the president felt he needed to replace that woman with another woman. So for me, she will always be my mentor. I'll always consult her, so that I know her shoes are too big for me. Even by stature, she's a big, tall woman. I'm just a short, small woman, but I'm sure the sum total of her and me will make Zambia great and make the women stand tall.
Thank you very much, Professor Nkandu Luo. It's been lovely having you on African Voices platform.